Bertrand Russell was never a man of faith, not because he failed to understand religion, but because he examined it with the same precision he applied to any other system of thought. As a young man, Russell was captivated by the questions that had haunted humanity for centuries. Why are we here? What is the purpose of life? Many found solace in the certainties religion offered, but Russell was not content with answers that evaded scrutiny. For him, religious beliefs were not revealed truths, but human constructions, subject to rational critique. In Why I Am Not a Christian, he systematically dismantled the reasons people believe in God, not to destroy their faith maliciously, but to reveal that many of these beliefs were upheld more by habit and fear than by logic or evidence. He urged his readers to confront these inherited ideas, not with hostility, but with the courage of honest inquiry. Russell did not see religion as a source of comfort but as a barrier to free thought. Faith, in his view, was based on the acceptance of dogmas without question, whereas philosophy must begin with doubt. There is no progress without skepticism, without the willingness to ask whether what we have been taught is actually true. What we need is not faith but intelligence combined with courage, he wrote. For him, accepting something without proof was not a virtue but a form of intellectual submission. He did not believe that religion was necessary for morality, nor that God was required to explain the origins of the universe. His rejection was not impulsive but the result of methodical reasoning. He analyzed the classic arguments for the existence of God and found logical inconsistencies in them. If the universe requires a first cause, why would God not also require one? If the design of the world proves the existence of a creator, how do we explain suffering, injustice, and chaos? For Russell, religion not only failed to justify its vision of the world, but also imposed a system of belief based on fear of punishment and the promise of reward after death. True freedom, he argued, could only exist when thought was freed from these chains. For Bertrand Russell, belief in God was not just a logical error but a tool of control. He did not deny that religion could provide comfort, but he argued that such comfort came at a cost: intellectual submission. Faith demanded the acceptance of certain truths without question, and in his view, any idea that could not be subjected to reason and evidence was not worth believing. It is undesirable to believe in something simply because authority dictates it, he wrote. For him, truth did not depend on tradition or the antiquity of a belief, but on its ability to withstand rational scrutiny. One of his strongest critiques of Christianity was its impact on freedom of thought. Throughout history, religion has not only attempted to provide answers about existence but also sought to impose them, persecuting those who questioned its claims. From the burning of heretics to the censorship of scientific knowledge, Russell saw religion as an obstacle to progress. He did not deny that some religious figures had been morally exemplary, but he maintained that the structure of dogma itself was incompatible with the free pursuit of truth. Truly free thinking, he argued, could not rely on prohibitions or punishments for questioning established ideas. Russell insisted that religion is not necessary for morality. The claim that without God everything would be permitted was, in his view, an argument built on fear rather than reason. Societies do not require divine threats to develop ethical principles. Compassion, justice, and cooperation do not originate from commandments written in a book but from human experience. Morality is a social construct that evolves over time, not an immutable law dictated from above. Religion, by claiming to possess absolute truth, becomes a barrier to this evolution. Instead of allowing morality to adapt to new realities, it freezes it within doctrines that can become obsolete and even dangerous. Bertrand Russell did not merely criticize the idea of God. He also questioned the figure of Jesus as a moral model. Unlike many skeptical thinkers who acknowledge Jesus's ethical teachings as admirable, Russell was more critical. He did not deny that some of his teachings promoted compassion and kindness, but he argued that they were neither as original nor as perfect as they were often presented to be. The so-called Golden Rule, treating others as we wish to be treated, was not exclusive to Christianity. It had already existed in earlier philosophies, from Confucius to the Stoics. For him, there was nothing divine about Jesus's morality. It was simply a reflection of principles that any society could develop without the need for supernatural intervention. Beyond this, Russell questioned certain aspects of Christian doctrine that, in his view, were incompatible with a truly humanistic ethic. In the Gospels, Jesus repeatedly speaks of eternal punishment and condemnation for those who do not believe in his message. I do not think that a person who truly has deep humanity can threaten others with hell, he wrote. For Russell, a genuine moral leader does not impose obedience through fear but through reason and example. The idea that love and compassion are accompanied by the threat of eternal punishment seemed to him irreconcilable with an ethical system based on justice and respect for individual dignity. Another of Russell's critiques was that Christianity had historically been used to justify suffering rather than combat it. The notion that pain has a purpose, that suffering is a divine test or even a virtue, had served to keep people in resignation. Religion encourages submission rather than rebellion against injustice, he said. Instead of motivating humanity to improve its living conditions here and now, many religious doctrines have taught that the world is merely a valley of tears and that true reward will come after death. Russell believed this mindset weakened the struggle for progress, leading people to accept suffering as part of a divine plan rather than recognizing it as a problem to be solved. For Bertrand Russell, one of the great fallacies of Christianity was its insistence that faith is a virtue. He could not accept the idea that believing without evidence was something admirable. To him, the search for truth had to be based on evidence, not on authority or tradition. One should not believe something simply because it was taught in childhood or because society considers it sacred, he argued. Reason, in his view, should be the fundamental guide of human thought, and any belief that could not be sustained by rational arguments ought to be discarded. But the problem with faith was not just epistemological, it was also practical. Russell warned that blind belief in religious doctrines had led to some of history's greatest conflicts. The world is filled with wars, persecutions, and violence justified in the name of God. When a man feels that absolute truth is on his side, he becomes incapable of tolerating dissent, he said. Religion not only imposes dogmas but often seeks to silence those who question them. To him, faith becomes a mechanism of control, a way to suppress critical thinking and perpetuate structures of power. This does not mean that Russell believed science had all the answers or that human knowledge was infallible. What he defended was a constant attitude of skepticism. Instead of accepting absolute truths, he believed we should always be willing to revise our ideas, correct our mistakes, and change our minds when the evidence demanded it. Religion, on the other hand, offers immovable certainties, answers that cannot be questioned without being seen as blasphemy. To Russell, this was an obstacle to progress. There is no advancement without doubt, without the ability to recognize that what we believe today might be refuted tomorrow. Blind faith, in contrast, condemns us to intellectual stagnation. Bertrand Russell saw religion not just as a philosophical problem but as an obstacle to human well-being. His concern was not only the lack of evidence for God's existence but also the practical consequences of building morality on religious dogma. Throughout history, Christianity has been used to justify authoritarianism, discrimination, and unnecessary suffering. Religion prevents people from seeing things as they really are because it imposes a structure of thought that cannot be questioned without fear, he wrote. For him, morality could not be based on revelations but on a rational analysis of what truly contributes to human happiness and flourishing. One of his strongest arguments was that religions, far from being a guide for ethics, have too often been a source of intolerance. The belief in absolute truths has led to the persecution of heretics, the censorship of critical thought, and the suffering of countless individuals in the name of supposed divine justice. Russell did not deny that some religious believers had made valuable contributions to humanity, but he argued that these actions stemmed from their humanity, not their faith. Human kindness exists in spite of religion, not because of it, he asserted. For Russell, the path to a better society did not lie in religion but in reason and compassion. We did not need the promise of heaven or the threat of hell to be just people. What mattered was reducing suffering, increasing well-being, and ensuring freedom of thought. The problem with Christianity, in his view, was not just that it was false but that it promoted a worldview where obedience was valued over curiosity, where fear replaced exploration, and where authority was imposed over the free pursuit of knowledge. Bertrand Russell did not merely reject Christianity, he saw its decline as an opportunity for humanity. He did not believe that the world needed religion to be moral, nor that the absence of God would lead to chaos and despair. On the contrary, he argued that true freedom could only be achieved when the human mind was liberated from the chains of dogma. Fear is the basis of religion, he said, fear of the unknown, of death, of pain. Science, on the other hand, teaches us to face uncertainty with courage. To him, life did not require a cosmic purpose imposed from above. Human dignity lay in the ability to find meaning for oneself. But rejecting Christianity did not mean embracing cynicism. Russell did not advocate for a world without values, but for one where ethics were based on reason and empathy rather than obedience. We did not need to believe in a supreme being to understand that suffering is harmful, that compassion is desirable, and that justice is essential for coexistence. A morality based on fear of divine punishment was not genuine, it was merely a form of submission. True morality, in his view, emerged from the recognition that our actions have consequences for ourselves and others, and that our decisions should be guided by reason, not tradition. For Russell, the problem with religion was not only that it presented claims without evidence, but that it demanded a form of submission that stifled progress. History has shown that humanity advances when it dares to question, when it leaves behind absolute certainties and embraces exploration. He believed that a world without religion would not be a world without meaning, but one where each person could build their own sense of purpose without fear or imposition. We must remain open to knowledge, willing to change our minds, to doubt, to explore, he wrote. And in that freedom of thought, he saw the true essence of a fulfilled and unrestricted life.